In this lesson, you'll learn about the FewShot prompt template class and the example selector classes. I'll walk you through code to demonstrate the practical use of these classes. The code that I'll be using in this lesson is available under the LangChain folder. You've already learned about the prompt template class, whereas the prompt template class simplifies the task of building prompts in general. The FewShot prompt template class simplifies the task of building and managing FewShot prompts. It's a utility class. The examples that are used for building the prompt can be dynamic. That is, they don't need to be hard-coded in the template, and not all examples that you pass are used at runtime. Examples can also be retrieved from storage. Let's go over the parameters needed for the creation of the FewShot prompt template. You need to provide the examples as a list, or as I mentioned earlier, these can be retrieved from storage. Next, you need to provide the example prompt template, which lays out how these examples will appear in the prompt. Next one are the templates which are placed before the examples and after the examples. The parameter suffix is a required parameter, whereas the parameter prefix is an optional parameter. Example selector introduces dynamicity to the examples picked up in the prompt at runtime. I'll cover this in details in a few minutes. Important thing to keep in mind is that examples and example selector are mutually exclusive. What that means is that you can only provide value for one of these parameters. Let's go over how FewShot prompt template class is used. I've taken these examples from the GSM 8K dataset, which has math word problems. The first thing we'll do is set up the examples template, which will have the question mapped to the question variable and answer mapped to the answer variable. So here, as you can see, we have the question and the answer in each of the examples. That's what we are mapping these to. Next, we'll create the prompt template for the example. Prompt template, provide the template equal to examples template and input variables equal to question and answer. So now we have the template for the examples. Next, we will create the FewShot prompt, and to do that, I'll create a variable LLM prompt template equal to FewShot prompt template. Here we need to provide the example prompt, which is equal to the one that we created earlier. Next, I need to provide the input variables. The input variables is for getting the input from the user. So here it will be input, which will be a question. In this particular case, it will be a math problem. And then we need to provide the examples, which is equal to examples. Now comes the required parameter suffix. Here we will say question, and then we need to provide the input. So this is going to be the last thing in our prompt, which basically is prompting the LLM to respond to the given question. Although prefix is not a required parameter, let's add it here. Use the examples and answer the question. To test it, I'm going to use a question from the GSM 8K dataset again. Print out LLM prompt template dot format, provide the value for input equal to the question, and let's run the two cells now. And here is the prompt. There are 4 questions in the example list, and those 4 questions are here, and this is the question provided as input. The example selector parameter in the FewShot prompt needs to be an instance of the example selector class. There are 3 classes that can be used. The first one is the length-based example selector. The number of examples that you can add to the prompt is restricted by the context window size of the LLM in use. This class allows you to dynamically adjust the number of examples in the prompt by setting the max length equal to the number of words allowed for the example. All examples included in the prompt are complete. Keep in mind that this class requires the examples to be made available by way of a Python list, so they are in memory. Semantic similarity example selector allows the chain to select a set of examples from a vector database. Examples that are semantically closest to the given question are picked and added to the prompt. Idea is that if the examples are relevant, then LLM will produce better results, especially on the reasoning task. I'll revisit this class in the section on vectors and embeddings. Next class is the max marginal relevance example selector. This one is based on the maximal marginal relevance technique. This technique is also referred to as MMR technique. The MMR technique is used in information retrieval and document summarization. Idea of its use here is to select examples that are not only relevant to a query or question, but also diverse in nature. I've provided more information on this technique in the course guide, and I've also added the link to the research paper that describes use of MMR in details. Let's try out the length-based example selector. Let's start by creating a variable to control the length. Max length equal to, let's set it to 300, and now we will create the example selector length-based example selector. Set max length equal to max length. We need to provide the example prompt here, and we're going to use the example prompt that we created earlier. Prompt template example. Next, we need to provide the set of examples, so we'll say examples equal to examples, and now we have the length-based example selector ready. Now we will create the few short prompt template with max length. To save some time, I'll just copy the earlier version of few short prompt template. And now what we will do is, instead of providing the examples here, we will provide the example selector equal to length-based example selector that we created. So as I was telling you earlier, examples and example selector are mutually exclusive. So instead of picking up the examples from the list, now the few short prompt template will request for examples from the example selector. And at this time, we are ready to test it out. So print LLM template max length dot format and provide the question. Run it, and here is our prompt. So here you will see that instead of 4 examples, now we have 3 examples, 1, 2, and 3. Now we can change this and see the impact here. Let's change this to 100 and see what will happen. Now, as you can see, only 1 example was added to the prompt. So this way you can control the number of examples that are passed in the prompt. Let's go over the key points from this lesson. You would use the few short prompt template for building few short prompts. The examples can be managed in memory or in vector storage. With the example selector class, examples are picked dynamically at runtime based on the example selector class in use. It is highly recommended that you try out the few short prompt template class on your own, as it is used very commonly. Happy learning, and I'll see you in the next video.